A couple's idyllic vacation turns into a deadly love triangle with a local surfer. In southern Mexico, a couple, Manuela and Gabino, travel by boat through the dense jungle until they reach a small beachside town. By the ocean, the woman watches the local men playing soccer on the sand while her boyfriend asks the innkeeper if they have any rooms available. Later, the pair lies down on a blanket by the water and passes the time watching the waves hitting the beach. That afternoon, they head to a hut where the man asks King Black if he can rent a surfboard. Moments later, the surfer hands Manuela a beer and mentions how beautiful the view is. She agrees and says how much she'd love to live in a place like this. However, Gabino, who's busy texting on his phone, scoffs because he doesn't believe she'd survive 2 weeks there, implying that he thinks she's high maintenance. Later, the woman asks King Black about the chained-up animal and he says it's a badger. Then, she wonders what his roots are, so he explains that he's from Honduras. That night, the couple joins the locals by the bonfire where they listen to the surfer perform a rap song that he wrote. He says he'd like to move to the city one day, record his music, and hopefully become famous. Manuela calls him talented, and when she asks Gabino what he thinks, he hesitantly agrees. During dinner, the pair eat their food in silence as a new group of tourists arrive. Later, the couple makes love in their room, but the woman cuts it short when she sees a shadow moving through a small crack in the wall. Manuela thinks there's someone outside watching them do the deed, so Gabino goes to check. However, when he returns, he says he went around the hut and found no one there. The man tries to continue their lovemaking, but the woman says she can't do it because she's certain there's someone out there watching them. Instead of understanding his girlfriend's concerns, Gabino thinks she's acting crazy and paranoid. When Manuela lights a cigarette, the annoyed boyfriend reminds her that he's often told her not to smoke in the room. Then, he turns his back on the woman and goes to sleep. So she puts the cigarette out and apologizes to the man. The next day, a woman selling tamales approaches the pair, but they politely decline because they just finished eating breakfast. Later, Gabino takes surfing lessons from King Black. Manuela asks the surfer what type of birds are flying in the sky, and he says they're white herons. When they return to the room, the woman tries to initiate intimacy, but her boyfriend doesn't acknowledge her affection. That afternoon, they walk through a thick patch of mangroves. Then, the couple sunbathes on a wooden dock, and Manuela brings up a topic that he promised they'd talk about. She adds how important it is to her, but Gabino says they can talk about it another time since they still have a few more days on their vacation. Suddenly, 4 kids arrive, and when the man tries to make light conversation, they respond in a rude manner. Gabino politely asks them to leave, but the children stand their ground, prompting the couple to gather their belongings. As they make their way through the mangroves, the man thinks she's leading them the wrong way. Even though she's certain they were on the right track, Manuela follows her boyfriend in the opposite direction. However, after minutes of aimless traversing through the thick roots, the woman finally says she was right the first time. So the exasperated man eventually admits defeat. That evening, while the bored couple plays a board game, Gabino sees the other tourists laughing and having fun on the other side of the restaurant. Moments later, the woman says she'll go back to their room to change her clothes. Then, she tries to unlock her boyfriend's phone to no avail. When Manuela returns to the restaurant, she sees Gabino at the group's table laughing and having fun. Because she's tired, she tells the man that they should go to bed. However, he says he'd like to stay for a little while longer, much to her disappointment. So the woman sits on the sand several feet away and drinks a beer. Later, Manuela sees her inebriated boyfriend asleep on a hammock. Then, she takes his phone and buries it a few inches deep in the sand. The next day, Gabino asks his girlfriend if she's seen his phone, and she shakes her head. She asks when was the last time he saw it, and he thinks he left it on the table. Later, the man takes another swimming lesson with King Black, and Manuela cheers him on from the beach. Minutes later, Gabino proudly asks if the woman saw him surfing, so she commends him for doing a good job and they share a kiss. When Manuela shows her boyfriend the sketches she drew, he jokes that she really captured his physique. As they share a sweet moment, she tells the man how much she misses him. However, instead of reciprocating her feelings, Gabino lies back down on the blanket and returns to reading his book. Seconds later, Manuela says she was offered a job in Barcelona, so the man reminds her that he just got tenure at the institute, which means he has a stable job in Mexico. The woman explains that she doesn't have a job here and he can easily find one if he agrees to move with her. She adds that all their friends are in Barcelona as well. Suddenly, the rude children approach the pair and begin harassing Gabino. They kick sand on his face, take his hat, and tease him about his thinning hair. Fortunately, King Black sees the kids tormenting the tourists, so he scares them off. Then, the surfer asks the couple if they'd like to join him and the other guests on a short trip through the mangroves. Later, the group rows through the mangroves on little rowboats. When they reach the destination, Manuela picks dried sticks to use for the fire. Then, she sees Gabino leaning closely toward one of the female tourists. Moments later, King Black teaches the woman how to properly gut and clean a fish. Soon, the man joins his girlfriend and the surfer as they grill the fish, and he realizes that they spent quite some time alone together. Later, Manuela watches a large spider attack a beetle that got tangled up in its web. After her walk, she shows Gabino a small strange fruit that she found, and she jokes that he should eat it to see what happens. When he asks if they should join the group, the woman pointedly says he can go ahead because he needs to teach his new friend how to use the hula hoop. Realizing that she didn't like his interaction with the other woman, the man annoyedly walks away. On the boat ride back, Manuela sneaks a few glances at King Black's body. That afternoon, a woman announces through the village PA system that there's a storm coming, and the officials strongly advise against sailing in open waters. Later, the woman sees King Black enter a tent, and as he leaves, he sees that she saw him. Then, as Manuela spots the surfer watching as she takes a shower, she smiles. Hours later, King Black observes the woman as she takes pictures of the tiny creatures living in the sand. Soon, Gabino joins them and asks his disinterested girlfriend if she saw him catch 2 waves on his surfboard. The surfer gives him pointers on how he could have done better, but the boyfriend doesn't care about his input. Manuela secretly smiles while listening to the 2 men exchange passive-aggressive remarks. Eventually, King Black grabs his board and leaves. During dinner, Gabino apologizes to his girlfriend for what happened with the tourist earlier and they share a kiss. As the couple makes love in their room, the surfer watches them through a small crack in the wall. Later, Manuela returns to the beach by herself and King Black appears and offers her a hit on his spliff. After a few 10 seconds of silence, the surfer bids her goodbye and walks away. The next day, the woman sees dark clouds forming in the sky, a sign of the oncoming storm. While her boyfriend takes another lesson with King Black, Manuela stays on the beach and draws sketches. Suddenly, she sees a broken surfboard wash up on the rocks, so she runs to the water to see if Gabino's okay. When the men reach the beach, the surfer admonishes the man for breaking his board, so he points out how he nearly drowned but promises he'll pay for it. In the room, Gabino says he thinks King Black wanted him to get hurt earlier. He counts the cash in his wallet and realizes it isn't enough. The man says he needs to find an ATM, and when Manuela asks if she can come with him, he tells her to stay put. Later, the woman takes a walk around the village and buys tamales from a vendor. The local asks what her name is and states that the tourist came to their village at a bad time. As Manuela walks down a deserted road, King Black chases after her. She asks him what he wants, but instead of answering, he gently touches her arm and leans in. Just as he changes his mind and pulls away slightly, she tries to go in for a kiss. Because of the awkward, intense moment where it seems they're both unsure of what they're doing, the woman decides to walk away. Manuela drops her tamale, so the surfer picks it up and she walks back to retrieve it before continuing on her way. That evening, the locals watch a news report informing them that the tropical storm has turned into a Category 4 hurricane. Manuela overhears the other tourists discussing how it might be best to leave before the weather worsens because there's no point staying by the beach if it's gonna rain. Soon, Gabino returns carrying 2 surfboards and explains that he bought one as a replacement for the one he broke and another for himself. When he sees his girlfriend smoking, he reminds her not to do it inside the room because it smells. However, Manuela doesn't listen to the man and takes another drag of her cigarette, so the man sits on the edge of the bed and uses the door to fan the smoke. The next day, the woman prods a dead fish with a stick and sees that there are dozens more scattered on the beach. Eventually, a flock of birds gathers around the fish and feast on their rotting flesh. Later, a public service announcement rings through the village stating that the Army and emergency services strongly recommend evacuation of the area. Due to the hurricane possibly causing flooding, nearby schools will serve as temporary shelters for the evacuees. The couple hears a male tourist telling the innkeeper that his wallet and phone were stolen, so Gabino shares that his phone also went missing. However, the innkeeper says nothing of the sort ever happens there. Manuela tells her boyfriend that they should probably evacuate with the others, but the man confidently assures her that they'll be alright and that nothing's gonna happen to them. The woman looks out onto the ocean and sees the ominous rain clouds nearing the island. Soon, the other tourists begin taking down their tents. Meanwhile, Manuela wanders into a hut and she calmly leaves when a child sees her. That afternoon, the woman sketches on a table on the beach. Suddenly, King Black appears and offers her a beer, but she declines. Then, the man caresses her arm, but she pulls it away. Seconds later, he does it again, prompting Manuela to rise to her feet and walk away. The surfer takes the woman in his arms, but she orders him to let her go. Flustered, Manuela walks back to the room where Gabino asks if she was doing the deed with King Black. When she doesn't answer, he begins packing his bag and condescendingly says he's leaving so she and the surfer can make love. So she retorts that all she wanted was for them to have fun together like they did before and for his girlfriend to stop texting him all the time, revealing that Gabino's in a relationship and Manuela's been the other woman this entire time. She adds that he's unaware of how dangerous King Black is and what he's capable of. The man asks if anything happened, but she doesn't want to disclose it, fearing it'll only make things worse. Eventually, Manuela says the surfer followed her around and tried to touch her. Even though the woman begs him not to, Gabino insists on talking to King Black. Moments later, she finds the two men fighting and separates them. The surfer grabs a machete and threatens to inflict more damage if he tries to attack him again. Gabino breaks down in tears and says their relationship isn't working out. However, Manuela says they can still salvage it and that they just need to leave as soon as possible. In the room, the man says he'll find them a boat to get them out of there. When Manuela lights a cigarette, Gabino asks if he can take a drag, then says he'll be right back. The next day, the man still hasn't returned, worrying his girlfriend. So the woman weathers the storm to walk around the village, calling out Gabino's name. Eventually, she reaches King Black's house, and when he hears her voice outside, he opens the door so she can enter. Inside, the hesitant woman tries to push the surfer away at first, but they end up doing the deed. After the act, he hears Manuela crying, so the man apologizes. Then, she accuses King Black of hurting her boyfriend. However, he swears he didn't and adds that he saw Gabino get on a boat and leave yesterday. The surfer asks if she's staying or leaving, so she composes herself and gets off the bed. Later, King Black offers to give Manuela a ride on a motorboat. When the engine stalls, the man checks the motor. Suddenly, Manuela grabs an oar and hits him on the head. Then, the woman pushes the surfer's body into the water and continues the journey alone.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.